Patrick, mettila in mezzo Patrick, palla nostra, Suso, tira Alessio, Suso, tira, perché non tiriamo? Ma perché non tiriamo? Gol! Alessio Romagnoli, gol! Alessio Romagnoli! Alessio! Il gol del capitano ancora all'ultimo, come Gilardino!
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan Podcast. I'm your host, Ollie Fisher, back after a week's absence. You can find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher, and I'm joined by Anthony Torgrud.
What's up, guys? Here as per usual, but we don't have Madison this week, so big round of applause for that. It's just the OG duo. You can find me on Twitter at Torgrud45, and yeah, we got a lot to discuss, so just dive on in.
Yeah, we'll blame technical difficulties for Maddie's absence, but more about that when he's here to explain himself next week. But yeah, we have got a lot to discuss. We have a new manager, so obviously I wasn't on the one last week where I talked about the game against Genoa and how it wasn't perhaps the most convincing win and how that might still end up costing Gianpaolo his job. And it was sort of like about an hour after we put out the last episode that everything sort of started to happen, which was just pretty bad timing. Gianpaolo was officially sacked by the club. By this point, it was very apparent, through numerous reports from pretty credible sources that it was going to be Stefano Pioli who would take over from him. And that is exactly what happened. Gianpaolo was sacked on the Tuesday. Pioli was presented to the media on Wednesday morning. And yeah, been training with the team since then. There was some reports at the time that you recorded, and obviously you discussed the idea of hiring Pioli sort of as a hypothesis in the last podcast. But how did you feel when it was actually all confirmed?
Yeah, so based off what we were saying, or what I was saying in the last podcast, I saw zero positives to it. I thought it was a ruse to kind of force Inter's hand and get the deal over the line with Spalletti, and Madison was kind of in agreement with me there. We really had no doubt that Pioli was never a real option. We were pretty dead set in that this was totally not going to happen. And by the time we were done recording, things started coming to fruition. Every source was saying, yo, it's Pioli now, Pioli this, Pioli that. And then I went to bed and I woke up and it was confirmed. So that was a pretty bummer way to wake up. I didn't want him to be the coach, and to be honest, I'm still not a fan. Obviously, I want him to succeed and I want the club to succeed. So I'm wishing him the best, but I'm not a fan of the guy. The one positive for me is that he does play a variation of my favorite formation. I mentioned on here before that I'm a big fan of the 3-4-3 with an attacking midfielder instead of a defensive. He plays that, or he'll play a 4-2-3-1, which is basically the exact same thing. It just depends on how you really like to write it down. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, it was a big whirlwind of a 24, 36 hours time period. Yeah, I don't know. What were your thoughts?
I was angry. I was really angry. I really wanted to be on the one last week and sort of use it as an opportunity to plead with the management. Not that they listen to this, or maybe they do listen to this, that this is the perfect opportunity. And it was also perhaps the perfect indicator from Gianpaolo's reign and the fact that we took a gamble on a coach that hadn't yet done it at a top club, an unproven coach, you might say. We took that risk. Some would say, given what was out there in the market, there was Sarri, there was Conte, Allegri became available, obviously, once he left Juve, that we went for kind of a low-cost option and hoped that his vision would fit in with the squad that we have. It didn't work. But then thought, well, thankfully for us, if we're getting rid of Gianpaolo, Luciano Spalletti is available. He's obviously a serial top four finisher. I think I want to say it's 6 out of 7 seasons he's finished in the top four with Inter and Roma, which is he even finished sort of second with Roma. And yeah, like I said, just a consistent top four finisher. He was available. It all came out, again, through some pretty reputable sources that he kind of agreed terms with us. And then it all just seemed to kind of fall apart. I mean, we had various discussions in the group chat as it was all kind of unfolding about how it didn't seem to make sense for Inter not to just pay Spalletti what he wants, because they owe Spalletti and his staff 15 million euros over the next 2 years, up until 2021. And if Spalletti was asking for 5 million as severance pay, surely you just pay it, and then you rid yourself of that remaining 10 million euros in costs. But that wasn't the way that it happened, and then it all kind of transpired afterwards that he perhaps didn't even agree personal terms with us. He was asking for too much salary. Basically, by the end of Tuesday, which was obviously the day that it was by the end of Monday, it had all come out that Spalletti was no longer an option for us, and that was basically dead, and that it was now Pioli who was the man who was lined up. And I was as angry as probably a lot of our fan base were. I thought the people tweeting Pioli out before he'd even been appointed was a bit silly. I don't understand directing all the anger at him as an individual. He's obviously going to take a job that he's underqualified for. It's a good opportunity for him to manage another big club, and really I won't say it's a no-lose situation for him, but his reputation isn't really there, so he can't damage it so much anymore. But he's here, and I've heard positive things from, ex-players. Stefano Pioli, there's a really good interview that we have. It was done by Mercato on our website, basically lifting the lid on what he's like as a coach. He's meant to be a really good man manager, which is kind of what we need at the moment to help restore a damaged group. I don't know though. I'm struggling for the positives, because you see like the thing that you really want in the shop window, and it seems that you can go in and afford it and everything's going to be happy days, and then you end up walking out with something that's not quite as good. I don't know.
And I think that is a big part of it. We saw the idea of Spalletti. We were more than halfway past the finish line with him. We agreed terms. We were waiting on Inter, and like you said, he's a serial fourth place finisher. So everyone saw the best possible outcome as being a reality, and then all of a sudden it flipped. And had Spalletti never been in the discussion, I don't think the hate for Pioli would have been as vocal as it was. And I'll touch on that hashtag in a bit, because I do want to talk about that, and I did take part in it, so I definitely have some views for that. But to go back to Inter, it makes sense, obviously, from what you said, to pay that 5 million or whatever, save the 10. But the way Inter looks at it was the same way we were fudging numbers with sales, that amortization. For them, they pay weekly. And remember, they spent a lot in the transfer window. So to add an extra 5 million up front when it could be just split out, over their books, I think it makes a big difference for them. And I don't know what their financial situation's like, but I know that that's a substantially larger portion of what they were anticipating to pay this year, at least for the rest of 2019 on the books. So I kind of understand their point of view of saying, we'll offer you this little amount. Now, Milan could have offered to bridge the gap. Obviously our financials are pretty screwy as well, so maybe that just wasn't an option for us. And who knows? Maybe this works out. We got the guy who's significantly cheaper. That's one positive. We could now reinvest more money into players if need be. You did mention he's a good man manager, and while I don't know personally, obviously, but I have seen a lot of pictures of him and the players laughing and smiling, and that's something we never saw with Giampaolo.
Yeah.
And we've heard stories from previous players about how Giampaolo doesn't talk to the players. He watches, take notes, and then the assistant managers and the staff do more of the player interaction. So with a young team, maybe having a guy who's a good man manager is all we need. We saw that with Gattuso, and that's kind of how we shined. We know he was good at that. He motivated the guys, so maybe this will be good for us. One thing about Pioli that's worrying is his statistics, as you mentioned. He's underqualified for this job. If you look at, because he made a quote, and it sounds like this is just a back and forth thing now with us and Inter for whatever reason. When Inter signed Conte, he said, "My motto is head down and run." Conte has like almost a 60% win rate throughout his career. He's a proven manager. Then there was Giampaolo, who, to take a jab at Conte, said, "My motto is head up and play football," and he's got a 37% win rate throughout his
That
career.
went well, Marco. Excellent work, mate.
Yeah, definitely pulled that one off. And then now we have Stefano Pioli, who said, "My motto is head up or down, just win." Well, his win rate is 36%. So, um, yeah, you
He
can't
doesn't
see me
do
right
that.
now, but I have a big funny grin on my face because really it's just comical.
Mhm.
And another thing that I looked at how long his average tenure was at each club prior to us appointing him that Monday night, and it was 0.99% of a year. The one day after he was appointed with us, because he's now been with us, has brought him to an even 1 year tenure at every club he's played at throughout his career. That's what he averages now. So um, that's obviously not too hot either. So we'll see how it goes. But at this point, like we have to support him. And the
Yeah.
hashtag, that was a thing I didn't touch
Oh
on.
yeah. Go
So
on.
um, it wasn't, at least for me and in my opinion, directed at Pioli. It was more so we don't want to go this route. We as the fans were speaking now. You claim that you care about our opinion. They even tweeted that the next day about the stadium choices. Our fans' opinion matters to us. Yet they ignored the number 4 trending worldwide hashtag of Pioli out. Whatever. That's only like 80,000 tweets in a day. But so
Hmm.
people were more so wanting other options. It was not, at least for me, not saying I don't like Pioli. Even though I don't, it wasn't hatred towards him. It was more so the club saying, "Listen to us. We don't want this guy." And they didn't listen to us. So we'll see. I would love for them to prove us all wrong, and we just eat our words. That'd be fantastic. But um, yeah, we'll see.
I wonder how much of a negative atmosphere there was around his appointment. Expectations now being so low, if he possibly can't really fail in this job. If
And
you
that's a really
look
good
at
point.
if you look at it's not an easy schedule. He's inherited, a team that certainly needs their confidence building back up, despite winning that last game against Genoa, which, by the way, was one of the funniest games of football I've ever watched. I thought it was hilarious with all the red cards and
It
stuff.
was a circus.
It was, yeah, it really was. Like, if you want to show people what peak calcio looks like, it's definitely that. But we got Lecce, so that's, I wouldn't say a nice starter, but I guess there's not really such a thing when you're in such a high pressure environment. But then we go to Roma, who, surprisingly are actually only 3 points ahead of us. I say only 3 points. It's 3 points and it's early in the season, but it's kind of a case of they're not ripping up any trees. And then we have Spal at home, so he's got to be looking to win those first 2 home games without a doubt. I'd probably take a draw at Roma, but we'll come on to that preview in a week's time. Then you're looking at Lazio, Juve, and Napoli, and you're just thinking, well, I almost want to doubt the statement that I made about a couple of minutes ago about how he can't possibly fail, because it's like he's got to get an instant response out of this group of players and try get us some positive results in these games. Otherwise, the gap's going to become bigger between us and fourth, which is at the moment is only 4 points. And I think it was interesting. The one thing I will say about Pioli is that I thought he gave a very good press conference in his unveiling. I thought he was very optimistic about our chances and what he plans to do with the team. As I say, he's a very man management focused head coach. It seems, as you say, not had any experience, never met the guy or whatever, but you just got to hope that he's going to be the guy who's going to come in, put his arm around some players, and also know the right time to sort of challenge players and get a rise out of them, and just get the squad feeling a bit more harmonious, like it wasn't under Giampaolo. And then if they start playing with that freedom and with that confidence, we can start to see some good results. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I had drawn up a list of, and I'm going to write this into a feature at some point this week. I did write up a list of positives that I was going to tweet to just try and like calm people down at the time. I had his man management on there. I had also the fact that he's known as being a bit of a stabilizer at clubs. He took over at Inter in November of 2016 after Frank de Boer had an absolutely shocking start to the season. They were down in 14th, I believe they were, when Pioli took over, and he took them from 14th in November to 4th place by the 22nd round of the season. So, they won something like 8 out of 9 games.
Something like
in
that, yeah.
Stretch, yeah. And they were playing incredible football. They were playing very good football. I mean, they were beating in that run, they beat Genoa 2-0 at home, beat Sassuolo away without conceding. They beat Lazio 3-0 at home. They beat Chievo 3-1 at home. They beat Pescara 3-1 at home. They beat Cagliari 5-1 away. They beat Atalanta 7-1 at home. And that was the result that took them up to 4th. It just fell apart after that, basically. They lost 6 out of 8 after that, which obviously wasn't ideal, and ended up finishing the season in 7th place. But you can't deny that run that he went on, and it'd be interesting to know what transpired after that.
There are a lot of parallels between his Inter and I guess now his Milan. When Frank de Boer took over, there was a new system in place. Giampaolo took over, new system, switching formation. Catastrophic failures from both. They obviously kept Frank de Boer longer than we kept Giampaolo, but now we both bring in Pioli. And hopefully from there, you're right, the stabilizing, he's good at man managing. He's going to go back to the formation that the players are already used to and know, that 4-3-3, whether it's attacking or defensive, as we already have, yet to be seen. But that's what we're used to already, and I think he's just going to drill into the basics on that and kind of look into Gattuso's textbook and just see what he was successful at and see if he could implement that at a new level, But It's interesting because we started our first 6 games, which everyone over the summer said, besides the Inter game, we have a fairly easy opening stretch of games here. We started the first 6, 2-4. I'm sorry, the first 7, 3-4. There's a good chance that this next 6 games we go 2-4 again. So, and I don't know I don't think Pioli will get the same hate as Giampaolo will for this, because his run is going to be significantly harder. I mean, realistically, I don't expect us to come away with points at Juventus away. There's just almost no way, no matter what coach you have. Hosting Napoli is a tough one. I mean, we pulled it off before, but we weren't in mid-crisis. Lazio we could pull off if we do well against Spal, Lecce, and Roma. And Roma we could obviously beat as well. We've done that plenty in the past few seasons, but I don't know. It's really a crapshoot right now. It's a tough look for this season, but I don't think that Pioli's going to be under pressure and under fire after his first 6 games like Giampaolo was. I think he's definitely going to get the rest of the season, no matter how terrible he does, unless he loses the first 10, 15 games, But I think he's here for the season at least.
I think I hope you're right, but I think you underestimate how demanding our fan base is. The thing with Giampaolo, and the reason that there were still a vocal minority of people who wanted us to give him a little bit more time, even after the 4 defeats in 6 to start the season, was that he has a very clear, as we talked about so many times in here before, he had a very clear identity and a very clear philosophy of how he wanted his team to play football. It was a 4-3-1-2. Yes, you can say threw that out the window, but in terms of pressing, in terms of set pieces, all that kind of stuff, he had a very fixed idea of how he wanted his team to play. And you can say that you're not going to see that out on the field inside 10 games, and therefore he wasn't given long. Whereas with Pioli, I think people are going to expect the results to be more instantaneous. And, we might, if we beat Lecce by an odd goal, it's just a case of getting wins, and getting back to 4 on the season, as you say. But then if we were to go to Roma and lose, we might come home then and beat Spal, but, we have a bad result against Lazio, expect us to lose at Juve. Napoli have been pretty good at our place in recent seasons. All of a sudden, the pressure starts to build on somebody who's expected to come in and stabilise. That's what they've been calling him, is the stabiliser. And I don't know. We would see then. But I think Pioli's going to get until the end of the season regardless. Even if we're in the bottom half of the table, which I don't see happening. I still don't see it happening, but yeah, even if
our squad is good enough to finish top four and has been for a few seasons now. There's other issues that are keeping us from getting there, and I'm not saying strictly managerial, but I think mentality issues, management issues. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the players' performances, and other clubs. Obviously, goalkeepers like to show up against us, things like that. Weird things. But our squad's good enough, and I think you're right. We're going to finish still definitely top half of the table. At very worst, it's going to be seventh place again. I know nobody wants to hear that, but I don't think. I think we're going to be in the running regardless. No matter who our manager is, at some point, if we were to keep Jim Paul this whole season, we would have bounced back and be fighting for European placement again.
I mean, is that an argument then for him not to have been sacked? To have just given him the time?
Absolutely. But I don't think that would be a realistic expectation for the fans. I think, a club our size, we expect things to change when they're going that poorly. And especially when we've gotten used to having now 8 managers in the last few seasons,
it's graveyard
carousel. So I don't see why the management would have allowed him to stay given the form. I mean, they sacked him on a win so
yeah,
don't let him stay much longer anyways. But I think realistically we would have bounced back and, been fighting for the 4 to 7 position area.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess the beauty of football in a way is that it's not played on paper, but when you look at our squad on paper, it's certainly good enough to put up a very strong challenge for a top 4 position. Obviously, you've got Juve, Napoli, and Inter, who you would say are ahead of us and have better squads than us. You say by a margin, it's quite comfortable. Then you've got Atalanta, who I'm still. I don't say I'm skeptical about them keeping it up, but I'm certainly now less skeptical of them keeping it up because they look like they want to just bomb out of the Champions League. They've lost their opening 2 games, including the sort of winnable home game that they had against Shakhtar. So it's not going well for them. So if they just bomb out of the Champions League after 6 games and go back to focusing on the league, who knows, they might be able to put up a challenge for top 4 again, but we're already seeing it's a bit of a waste of time them being in the Champions League at the moment. But yeah, the problem that I have with our squad and the reason that I wasn't as optimistic as you two were in the pre-season predictions that we did is because it is so young. Our starting lineup, I think the average age of our squad is something like just over 24 years old. And when you consider that there's a couple of very old guys in there, like Pepe Reina, for example, that are really hiking the edge of it up. At the core of our team, as we've mentioned on here, a few times before, like Donnarumma's Calabria, Romagnoli, who's the captain at 24 years old, was named captain at 23 years old. Even Kessié, who feels like, he feels like one of the more seasoned veterans to this team because he's been with us since 2017, but he's only 22.
Well, he's close to 200 appearances now, isn't he?
Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, playing over 50 games a year is that's what it does. But obviously, even the signings that we made, obviously we signed Benacer, who is 21, Rade Krunic and Ante Rebic were the oldest at 25, Teo Hernandez at 21, Rafael Leao at 20. It's a young squad, and I think Boban was right in what he said. I've been very critical of Boban and Maldini over the last week or so for sort of their contributions to the sort of absolving themselves of blame, but I think that they were also very honest in the Pioli press conference, the unveiling thing, and Boban said it right. He said it a couple of months ago after the Mercato shut, and he also said it last Wednesday at the unveiling. Said that we didn't sign enough experience in the summer. And, it's okay, Elliott management having this vision, but what it's created is a very, very lopsided squad in terms of youth. And it's now that we're starting to see links with some more experienced players that have played a lot of minutes at an elite level that can come in and help this group by being natural leaders and by taking games by the scruff of the neck. And, we'll come on to some of those names in a little bit, but That is one positive about Pioli that we kind of mentioned is, he's meant to be good with young players, and that's exactly what we need. I thought it was interesting. There was I don't know if you saw it, the um, Gabriel Marcotti thing where he was on ESPN talking about why Pioli basically makes a lot more sense for us at the moment than Spalletti. Just in terms of, cost wise, it would cost a lot more to hire Spalletti. Spalletti tends to go into clubs and he's a bit of a character. That'd be the nicest way of putting it. He's known to be a bit erratic and kind of blow things up. You had the Icardi situation last season. You had the whole situation with Totti's farewell and how that was all handled. And really what we need at the moment is somebody who's going to come in and make the most out of what we've got, rather than someone like Spalletti who's going to probably demand investment and demand a couple of elite level players to get us back to being a top four team. I thought that was an interesting take. But yeah, there's a few other positives as well, I guess, that you could potentially look at. Style of play might be slightly better for us. Tends to play quite a high counter press, and we've seen little bits of success with that already this season. And also, I'm kind of hopeful that he can get the best out of Piontek, who's obviously had pretty bad struggles to start the season, and that's continued from the end of last season. I think it's 1 goal in his last 13 league appearances from open play, which isn't good. But we've seen Pioli in the past get the best out of Icardi, get the best out of even players like Gilardino, Miroslav Klose, Giovanni Simeone when he was at Fiorentina, even Pellissier when he was at Chievo and was banging him in. He gets the best out of his number nines. If we can get Piontek firing, he's our match winner in theory. So I don't know. There's a few reasons to be a little bit optimistic, but just on a more general point and looking ahead to the game against Lecce, how do you reckon we're going to line up? You said it's a 4-3-3 versus a 4-2-3-1, and they function quite similar. But what kind of an 11 are you expecting?
I think the back line that we're going to see is going to be the same back line that we've come to expect. Obviously, Calabria got a red card, so it'll be Conti instead of him. But I think we're going to see Teo Hernandez again, Romagnoli, and Musacchio. Who was the other red card? I can't remember. Oh, Castillejo. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. I do think we're going to see Biglia start. He was a big fan of him when they played together at Lazio. Pioli being a fan of Biglia. So I expect him to be back as kind of a full-time starter. Unless Benacer starts pulling some crazy stuff out in practice, I think Billy is going to find form again, and I think that's going to be good. That is probably our only experienced, aged player that can do something. Obviously, we're not going to start Reina over Donnarumma. That was a one-off thing because of that stomach issue. So I think Biglia is going to start in there. I'm torn because to me it would make more sense to do a 4-2-3-1 for his system. That way we could utilize Paqueta properly and still have Suso on the right wing properly, still have Piontek down the middle. You throw Leao on the left wing, but then it leaves Kessie out because Benacer would make the most sense with him. But if you do Kessie and Biglia, that's not bad either. I think that would work. So something along those lines, I think that's more of what we're going to see. It may get announced as a different formation, 4-3-3, and it might look like Biglia's on the left-hand side there, but I think realistically it's a 4-2-3-1 going forward.
Yeah, I, funnily enough, did a quick feature thing about why Gianpaolo should just throw the dice one more time in that game against Genoa and switch system again, as he had done already and shown a willingness to do so, and try a 4-2-3-1. And we talked about it, the idea of playing a double pivot, of playing Biglia alongside Benacer, or Biglia alongside Kessié, or Benacer alongside different sort of combinations in there. What we've got, now with a manager in Pioli who is pretty well versed in a 4-2-3-1. So I was kind of excited at the idea of him coming in and using that until I saw Sky's lineup graphic for a 4-2-3-1. And obviously Sky, you can make your own judgment on whether they're reliable or not, but they tend to be up there in terms of, how much their opinions and stuff are valued, I guess. But they had this 11, and this isn't for the Lecce game specifically, because obviously, as you said, Calabria is banned, but they had Donnarumma, Calabria, Musacchio, Romagnoli, Hernandez, and then they had Billy and Kessier as the deeper midfielders. They had Suso on the right, Rebic on the left, Piontek up front, and they had Çalhanoğlu in behind, and I did not like the idea of that.
I don't like that either, but that is his natural role. We've never actually been able to play him there, and we know that's what he's done the best. The other thing we got to think about going into Lecce is he's only had roughly 10 days to train the players. A lot have been on international duty, so does that affect his lineup? Do we see Rebic over Leao? Piontek was with Poland up until yesterday. I think, Leao was also. He just got back from Portugal. So I'm not really sure, but I think that might affect things a little bit. We might see some different names in there. It looked like he was training Borini a lot. Who knows how he's going to be utilized? Every coach has utilized him in 2 or 3 different positions. So we'll see what happens there.
Centre back.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, that's the only one he hasn't done, that and goalkeeper.
Yeah. You can't rule out goalkeeper at this stage either. Like a red card when we've used all our subs or anything, so he has to go in net. It would definitely be Borini to go in net, you just know. Yeah, and I think interesting point about the international stuff. This is one of those things that I like to debunk as a myth about how the international break, especially for a squad like Milan, how it's supposedly the best time for us to sack and therefore hire a new manager. This idea that you get 2 weeks uninterrupted work with the players is just absolute bollocks. Half of our squad have gone jetting off around the world on international duty. So it's actually probably the worst time to bring a new manager in. You want to sack a manager after a defeat, get a new guy in on the Monday, and then he has a week of uninterrupted work with the new players. I think an international break is actually a worse time to sack a manager. I think probably, evidence.
I think it depends on the size of the club. If Genoa did it or Sampdoria, then it's fantastic because then it absolutely would be 2 weeks interrupted. But yes, with international break for a club our size, totally going to have some downsides to it. But you do see that more often than not, that this is the time that the first sackings come around.
Yeah. I think that's right. But yeah, for that reason, on the international stuff, Leao, I believe, only played 1 game with Portugal's under-20s, and that was last week. I think it was on Friday. Obviously, we record this on the Monday night. So he will be fitter than Rebic. I think Rebic started 1 game and came off the bench against Wales on Sunday. I actually watched him. He made a big difference. He looked really good. Piontek's been on the bench pretty much for Poland. Suso wasn't in the Spain squad, but, Kessi's played. Paqueta, I think, didn't play many minutes. I want to say he was an unused sub in at least one of the games. So, for that reason, I think we might sort of see a couple of more logical choices for fitness-wise for that game, especially considering it's not Roma away. It's Lecce at home, and then he has a week to prepare for Roma away, which is going to be a fun one.
Lecce home is the perfect game for a new manager to start players that he didn't get to see. The players that are typically starters for us already that are on international duty coming back, you could start them and kind of just see how they play naturally and then make your tweaks going in the next game. And this is probably the best case scenario for a game to allow players to kind of just do their own thing, because chances are we're going to pull this one off anyways, but never say never.
Yeah, on that subject, Lecce, give us a prediction. I'm saying that to buy myself some time while I look at their squad and how they've started the season. Oh, they've got Lapadula.
Yeah, that's I think the biggest name guy. So he's surely going to score. It's going to be 2-1, I think. A Leao Paqueta goal, 1 apiece, and Lapadula for Lecce.
Yeah, that would be great. down the squad, and I remember Gianelli and Bueller. He's on loan from Stoke, but he was at Porto and was quite highly rated, I think, at one point. But he's ended up at Lecce, which is a weird one. Diego Farias, I remember him. Seems like he's on loan from. Is he on loan from Cagliari? Lofaso, I know his name. Kuma Babacar, from Sassuolo. He's an interesting. It's not. Yeah. Is that how?
It's
No.
not a bad squad. I mean, if you look, they've actually scored more than we have already this season. The problem is they just don't have a backline or a goalkeeper to save them. So that's kind of been our saving grace. If it wasn't for Donnarumma, we would be significantly lower in the table, which is crazy to think because there's not many spots left below us. But we definitely would have taken one of those if it weren't for him. So it's a lot closer on paper as far as the stats for the season go. But I think there's not a soul out there that's actually worried that we lose this game, other than the fact that we kind of started pretty weak earlier, and we tend to lose against the newly promoted sides.
I guess the big hope has to be, and this is why I'm going big with my prediction, that this is a launching pad of sorts. That, the team play with the shackles off. Hopefully the crowd gets behind them. I say it every single time we have a home game, but if we get an early goal in this just to kind of ease the nerves and get the team playing with some confidence, then if we win something like 3-0, then all of a sudden we go into that Roma game with a bit of renewed energy, and who knows, we might be able to then get a positive result and just keep bouncing along, really. So, yeah, I'm going to go with 3-0.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about the effect of a new manager. No matter who it is, no matter what they've done, just for the players' mentality of obviously struggling to the point where they've lost faith, the club's lost faith, the fans have lost faith, the manager's now gone, new guy comes in, and they have that renewed hope that they could, get it back together. And regardless of what the manager does, they tend to play a bit harder in that first game. Even if things go bad, they think we're definitely not about to do this whole thing over again. So they pull it out, and then that win, they'll think, hey, maybe this is our guy. Let's give him everything we got. Let's really focus in training. And that goes a long way, and that's how they catapult into those weird winning streaks when new managers are appointed. We see it pretty often throughout the sport.
Yeah, and I mean, if he takes us on a streak where we win 8 out of 9 or something like that, then we're probably going to be in a pretty good position. But he said in his press conference that he thinks that Champions League is still the objective. So fair play for coming out and saying that. He's set the benchmark now.
And he didn't have to, because it sounded like Boban was saying any European placement, was now the objective. So that is a big deal to me to hear Pioli say that. And I did compliment him on my Twitter feed, because I've been pretty vocal doing the opposite. So I felt it fair to, give him a little bit of praise. But I really liked the things that he said during his unveiling conference. I thought he had all the right points, but as we know, actions speak louder than words. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And it all starts on Sunday evening. So fingers crossed he kicks off with 3 points. Let's do some questions, shall we? So, at Joseph Calvo 13, a loyal listener, always asks good questions, says, do you think Pioli's positivity factor will fuel Milan to win the next 3 fixtures? So we mentioned it's Lecce at home, Roma away, and then Spal at home. I'll let you start off.
I think we'll definitely get Lecce and Spal at home. Roma away, I don't know if we have the mentality to do that right now. We saw Gattuso do it, I believe twice, maybe just once that season, I don't remember. But I know we've beaten them away in the last 2 seasons. So it's possible. Roma's not exactly doing all that incredible themselves. The positivity does play a big thing. Like I was just talking about the mentality there, and that new effect with the managers. So it's possible. Do I think we're going to win all 3 of those? Probably not. But do I think we could get 6-7 points out of it? Definitely.
Yeah, 6-7 points. I'd say 7 points would be the goal there, to go undefeated through those 3 games. It's the Roma one, really, isn't it? You'd expect us to take 6 points from the 2 home fixtures, with no disrespect to Lecce and Spal. It's the Roma one. That's going to be a test of kind of how much positive work he's done with the squad in the 2 weeks, really, that he's been or just over that he's been here. So, that'll be interesting to see how we stack up against a team that also has ambitions of challenging for the top four. If we do manage to win all three, then I think the feel-good factor does have to be a thing. You have to start talking about, is it really just as simple with the squad this young about good man management and being on a level with the players and reminding them that they're allowed to make mistakes and to play with confidence and to just keep doing what they're doing. I don't know. We will see. We will see. It does all hinge on that Roma game, though, I think. So we got No Swagowski asking, do you guys think there is a reason why we haven't seen much of Rebic up until this point? Will that change under Pioli?
I don't know if it's going to change under Pioli, but I think the main reason is just Leao's done well. The formation hasn't been the most favorable for him. We've changed it up so much. I think we'll see more of him just because the time's on his side to get into the squad in this season. So I think we'll see more of him, but I don't think there's any specific issues with Rebic that are leaving him out of the squad. I think it's really just Leao stepping up and kind of formation not being too favorable for him.
Yeah, I guess there's potentially three interesting scenarios that happen with Rebic, because I'm convinced he's a quality player that we need to try and include somehow. And also we saw when he was at Inter, Pioli had he relied a lot on Perisic on that left side, and they are different players, but they're not totally dissimilar. Rebic is a lot more like Perisic than he is like Rafael Leao. So if that's the kind of player that he would go for, a winger who's going to run hard and be very, very direct, then we might see more openings for Rebic. Also seen some kind of hypothesis, I think it was Gazzetta dello Sport, who said that you can't rule out the idea of Leao playing as a striker if Piontek's struggles continue. And also the idea of him playing in behind the striker is something to not completely rule out, which would be interesting. That would almost, to me, be like a 4-4-2 then, because he's not going to do an awful lot in terms of tracking back, you wouldn't have thought. But yeah, and then I guess there's also the idea of potentially Rebic playing on the right-hand side and competing for a starting place there if Suso can't find his form either. You could also say Rebic playing as an attacking midfielder. We need to find him minutes, basically, I think, because he was one of those summer signings that I was quite excited about, and we've not seen barely anything of him yet. So we need to try and get him some minutes, because based on what I've seen from internationals since, he's looked pretty good. He's looked pretty sharp, and I imagine he wants to prove a point as well under the new coach. So fingers crossed that he, along with the others, start firing pretty soon. At Purple Buckets, Christian Espinoza asks, are there any players that you guys secretly love that play for other teams and that you would love Milan to sign somehow?
I think that's a really fun question, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know about love to sign.
Secretly love, I guess, is like play for a rival, really. Players that you can't vocally.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Icardi. He obviously is at PSG now, but I've always been a fan. In fact, I have him in my FIFA career mode, and I always go for him. But players that I don't really mention that I'm a fan of, I guess sticking with PSG, I'm a big fan of Layvin Kurzawa. I don't think he's coming anytime soon, nor do I want him to, because he's pretty old and not too good anymore. But I've just always been a fan for whatever reason. I really like Eric Pulgar from Fiorentina, who scored a penalty against us in that game. And what's a third one for me? Mateo Kovacic, who used to play for Inter, but is now at Chelsea.
Well, yeah, that's a good one. I kind of liked Kovacic when he was at Inter for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I wanted us to get him. When he went to Madrid, I thought we were just going to snap him right up.
I went through this really weird period of actually quite liking Freddie Guarin as well when he was at Inter, because I think he became a bit of a meme for them. Like, he was that bad that they all hated him. So I was like, oh yeah, this guy's hilarious. And then he scored bangers.
I have a friend who looks just like him, and his like his contact ID in my phone is actually Freddie Guarin.
I think was he Colombian or something?
Yeah, or
Yeah,
Ecuadorian, or I don't know, one of those.
yeah.
We got the right flag colors.
Yeah. No, that's sort of. Yeah. So, but in terms of current players, I mean, there's obvious answers. I think probably tick either of Skriniar or De Vrij from Inter. I don't see a way that we're signing them at any point, but just someone to slot alongside Romagnoli, who's an absolute unit, and make us into a pretty good back four. From Juve, who do I like? I quite like Emre Can. I thought he was underrated at Liverpool.
I like Aaron Ramsey a lot.
Oh yeah, I like Ramsey. Yeah, I think he'd be pretty good as a number 10 as well in this system because he has that knowledge of slotting back into a midfield three when we need to defend in a bank as well. So he would have been good. But I tend to just hate every single Inter and Juve player. I'm now thinking of Roma's squad. I quite like Edin Dzeko. There's certainly a couple of transfer windows where I would have been happy for us to sign Edin Dzeko. And I also like that left back that Roma got, Spinazzola from Juve. I think he's pretty good. All right, who else is there? Napoli. I mean, there's the obvious ones from Napoli. There's Koulibaly, who's fantastic. Insigne. I think he's good. I really like Dries Mertens as well. I think his goal scoring record's kind of gone under the radar a little bit, and we were even linked with him a couple of months ago. So, but yeah, really, I'm just naming players that I respect, let's say, but don't necessarily think that we could ever sign or anything. But no, that's a good question actually. You got Abdullah 2000 asks, what type of this? See, I hadn't read this before, but I'm going to read it. What type of blackmailing do you think Belia, Hakan, and Suso have against the coaches / board that makes them get to start all these games?
Bigley hasn't really started much. I mean, he started the most recent game, and that was because Benacer wasn't very good. I mean, obviously, there's no blackmail, but that is a funny question. Hakan's been out of form. I don't think we're going to see much of him going forward, especially with the UEFA situation right now. He's supposedly being looked into for the military salute. Obviously, he's Turkish. And there's some stuff going on with Turkey right now that we don't need to get into. But and then Suso's our best player. He's not been good lately, and I think it's because we're trying to make him do things that he's not. But Suso's our best player, and that's why he's playing.
Yeah, I really. That's one of the other positive things that I had written down on the whole Pioli in list or whatever you want to call it. But that he will just play round pegs in round holes. He'll move Suso back out wide right and tell him to just do what he's good at, and that should hopefully bring about a return to form for him. Hakan, as you said, don't think we're going to see much of him. Belia, got to trust because Pioli got the best out of him at Lazio, particularly in that 2014-15 season when they finished third in the league. He was probably the best regista in the league. He was absolutely fantastic, and he was linked with like a big money move. I think he was, what will he have been then, about 29, 30? And he was linked with a big money move to Man United. I remember it was like 50, 60 million they were talking about, and it didn't end up going, and then we ended up signing him, a bit down the line. But gotta hope that just the way that Pioli sets his team up, playing with an actual sort of director, you would call it, of play at the base of the midfield, that helps him out, and his experience will become valuable and stuff like that. Otherwise, we do have Benacer waiting in the wings, so we'll see how that situation develops. Then we got a question here from Giovanni Scaramuzzino asks, do you think getting Zlatan on a free in January would be stupid? I just think it would be cool to have him back and also for his experience.
Yeah, I think the experience would be huge. I think he's one of those figures that commands respect no matter where he goes, and us having young players, they're going to really want Zlatan to like them. They're not going to want to get on Zlatan's bad side. So I think it would push him a lot more. I do think it would be fairly stupid because at this point in his career, even though he's bagged 30 goals in the regular season for MLS this year, It doesn't make sense to bring in a 38-year-old and start him over Piontek or Liao. I just don't know where he would fit into our system at this point, but I would love to have him back too. I think it would be cool, but yes, I do think it would be a stupid move.
Yeah. What wage is he on with LA Galaxy?
Not a lot, I think, because they have wage
Salary cap.
caps and stuff like that. So it's nothing special, nothing compared to what he was getting at United.
It says here he will earn $7.2 million in 2019. So
Well, that's a lot.
I'm going to try and do a quick conversion. That to
About
me,
5 million euros.
about 5 million euros. Is that right?
Yeah, a little more.
6.5 million euros per year. So he would instantly become our highest paid player based on that, assuming he's not going to take a pay cut. He might do it for sentimentality, but he's certainly not done that in the past. He seems to do this thing as well, does Zlatan. It's kind of one thing on me in the media where he talks about us and he keeps flirting with a return, and then it becomes clear that it's actually never really going to happen. Don't think it. I think this is a hypothesis we don't really need to talk about. Do I like the idea of it? I mean, Boban says we need experience, and that's right, but we need the correct kind of experience. We don't need somebody who's going to go in and add this giant ego to what is an already pretty disjointed locker room from what we gather. So I don't think it's the kind of experience that we need.
Personally, and I saw this actually on IFTV today, so this isn't my idea, but shout out them. I could see him signing for Fiorentina for free in January. That's a type of move that Rocco Commismo would make. We already saw him do it with Ribery, and I think that would be massive for Florence, and I would love to see it happen. Just
Can
to
you
get him
imagine
back in the league.
Imagine a 3-4-3 with Montella and Ribery and Chiesa with Ibra in the middle. I think they'd actually finish in the top four. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, they could kill it. They'd be screwed the following season when they both retire and they don't have anyone up front. But
yeah, they would. But I can actually see that happening. To be honest, SempreMilan Podcast asks, what do you think of Shevchenko as a future coach for Milan? He's having sensational form with the Ukrainian national team.
Well, we've kind of touched on that on either last week's or the week's prior podcast, and I'm big against it. Nothing against Shiva. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I'm just really tired of us making old players managers. Obviously, he has more experience than the ones that we hired, being the Ukrainian national team manager, but international football is a totally different beast. You don't see your players year-round. You don't have games year-round. It's a lot more managing to do, and it'd be against a far bigger quality of opponent. No offense to Ukraine and the people that they play in their friendlies and groups, but I don't think he's ready for a challenge like Syria right now, especially at a high-profile hot seat job like Milan. I don't think it's the right move, and I don't want it to happen.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those things that does happen in time, and it is just a matter of time. I agree with you. I think that it certainly wasn't the right time to turn to another club legend with the vacancy popping up. I also thought it was the wrong time for Shevchenko, because obviously he will want to take Ukraine into the European Championships next year, and he will want to manage through that tournament, we assume.
Did they qualify this weekend?
I believe they have now qualified, with the win against Portugal today, which is an impressive result. They beat Portugal at home. 2-1, I want to say, but I didn't see the full.
2-1.
I think it was 2-1.
Ronaldo had the goal.
I mean, you look at who else is in their group. They've got Lithuania, Luxembourg. They beat Serbia 5-0. Now, I know Serbia aren't, I don't know, perhaps their core is aging now, but they're not
world beaters, but they're definitely not chumps.
I mean, they got a 0-0 draw away at Portugal as well, so there's been a few impressive results in there. So fair play to Sheva for that. He's won 18 out of his 31 games in charge of Ukraine, losing only 5 of them. 47 goals for, 24 goals against. There is bright signs there, and he's doing a good job to say he's only 43 and he's coaching, the country that he became a legend in. So I think this is one of those things that is going to happen down the line, but while he's with Ukraine, and he's racking up experience there, and he's doing good things. Learning the ropes in a sort of less intense environment, I want to say, because as you say, you only see your players once a month and that kind of thing. And then when he makes that transition into club management, it might be something like Dynamo Kiev, at the start of, I don't know, start of the season or something like that. We'll see what he's like when it comes to club management. But you're right, fast tracking club legends again would certainly have been a much worse move than going for somebody already semi-established like Pioli. But no, it's a good question nonetheless. Trafalgar D Law, I am CKE, asks, a report claims that Pioli is considering Suso, Hernandez, Leao and Paqueta to be a key factor in his formation. Do you believe Suso should be included in this, or would you name another player instead of Suso? I mean, you've already said about Suso being our best player, which is fair enough, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, I would present a question to him and say, who would you play there? I mean, we don't have anyone else that would play right wing, so it seems like a no-brainer to me, unless you want Castillejo in, which I think is a step backwards. So, yeah, Suso should absolutely be there.
Yeah, again, I mean, and this would only be a hypothetical to float out there, would be if there's a way that we can sort of get Rebic to play on the right, Leao on the left, and Paqueta in behind Piontek, but that would be if Suso was injured or something. I think Suso gets in otherwise, and I think he has a part to play. It feels like this could be kind of a rebirth for him under Pioli.
I think you could do what you just said with Rebic and Leao, but you wouldn't do them as wings. You would just make it a top four diamond, with three attacking midfielders, basically. That's a very, very attacking-minded and risky formation because at that point you basically have a midfield two, and you just got to hope that they could, break it down, which I don't know if I have the players for that right now. So I don't think that's plausible yet, but definitely a possibility in the future.
Yeah, possibly. Right, I didn't do one last thing then before we round off the episode. Just looking through some of the rumours that we've had over the last sort of week or so, I guess. One that's come up more seriously today. Apparently, we've opened talks. This was according to Calcio Mercato with Ivan Rakitic. Quickly, what are your thoughts? Do you reckon this is the kind of player we should be going for in January?
Yeah, do you remember over the summer there was morning I woke up and just said we're signing Rakitic?
Yeah, that was really weird because you might be right on that.
Yeah, and I just pulled that out of my butt. Like I literally just made it up in thin air. I had no backing for it, but here we are. So I have to, steam forward with that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Boban's well connected with those surrounding the Croatian national team, and obviously his fellow compatriots. There were all the Modric stuff that was going on in the summer. I would still rather someone like Modric for a couple of years over Rakitic, who, whenever I've seen him, I've always found him looking a bit crap, really. I don't know. Never really saw the hype with him or anything, but at the same time,
he's really low rated with his that Barca fan base.
Yeah, I mean they're not the most level-headed fan base either. They still slag off Luis Suarez, even though he's been one of the best number 9s in the world for about a decade. Yeah, I just look at that right central midfield spot at the moment, and I think, and I said this before in the last episode, Kessie's not really staking a massive claim for it at the moment. So if we could bring in, position of real quality, a player of real quality for that position, then someone like Rakitic, if it made sense financially, if it was a loan with option to buy, something like that, then maybe why not? Speaking of which, apparently Wolves are going to make a new offer for Kessie in January. That's according to Gazzetta dello Sport. What do you think about Kessie? Would you let him go in January and for what price?
I don't think I would. I agree with you that he hasn't really laid the best stake to the position, but we don't have anyone else that plays like that drives forward, that's physical, that's strong and can defend at the same time. We don't have midfielders like that. We have the polar opposite end, the defensive people that just kind of sit back, Benacer and Biglia, and when we have the technical guys, Paqueta and Bonaventura, who will do the fancy footwork and move forward, but they're not strong. They can't just force someone off the ball or use that strength to shield it when they're under pressure. So I don't think we really have any replacement for him right now, and I don't want to see him go.
Yeah, I've said time and time again, I think he has a very specific skill set and one that we'd be stupid to offload for the wrong price. I do think there are probably midfielders who could perhaps offer a little bit more to the system, etc. But he's 22. I still would like to think he's on an upward trajectory, even if that is up and down in places. So yeah, I guess keep him around. I think keep him around for the time being, but don't be afraid of signing players who are going to offer genuine competition for places, because that's what drives the level of other players up. Thomas Muller, there's been some weird links with him. I say weird because it's sort of like, what? I don't know. I just can't see this one happening at all.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. I would love for it to happen. I think he would instantly become our best player. I think he's a fantastic player, but we would have to change it up. It would fit more with the defensive 4-3-3 because Pigoulet further back in, and then I think Thomas Muller would play more of a center forward as opposed to an out-and-out striker. And I think that would work in our system, albeit he's a bit slow, and we don't really have pacey wings to complement him. So I don't know exactly how it would work, but I don't believe it would make sense for us just based off the budget that we have. I don't see us going for him.
Yeah, I'm going to come in with a nuclear hot take here. I think Thomas Muller's one of the most overrated players in sort of recent footballing history. I think he was allowed to, or rather he looked like he was flourishing in that Bayern side because he was surrounded with absolute quality from all over. He played as like a, I don't know, they called it like a space finder in English, basically. He used to drift in and out of the gaps, pick the ball up and shoot, basically. A lot of his goals from inside the area, though, regardless. Never really found his true position, was tried out wide, was tried as a centre-forward, as you say, was even tried as like an attacking midfielder. And now he's struggling for game time, and I think it's because things have sort of caught up with him. If you stick a man on him, then he tends to be marked out of the game. So I don't want us to go for him. I don't think he would fit into a 4-3-3. I don't think he would fit. I don't know. I just don't see how he would really help us at the moment when you consider the financial aspect of pulling a deal like that off. But yeah, that's my hot take for this episode. Where else are we? Right, we've got Barcelona in for Rafael Leao.
No, don't do it. I'd rather sell Piatek.
I mean, I know. Again, this is one of those that it's far-fetched, I would say, because it's very rare that teams sell a player after just 6 months. But what kind of figure do you think it would take for Milan to come to the negotiating table in January?
Do you remember how much we purchased Leao for? Because I honestly
28 million.
28,
euros.
So it would have to be around 50. Honestly, I just don't see him saying, "Oh, we get a few bucks off this or a few million." Like 35, I don't think would be enough because just based off what we already spent salary-wise and the amount to purchase him, I don't think that would be beneficial to us, especially when we see the potential of the players. So it would have to be pretty hefty, and yeah. I don't think Barca would be down with that because they're not. I mean, they obviously have the money and can overspend on players, but I don't see them doing that. They're a wise club, so I don't think it would happen.
Yeah, I am a little bit worried because it can go one of two ways now. Either Rafael Leao carries on playing exceptionally well, scoring goals that make your jaw drop, basically, whatever, and then the speculation will increase because it's natural that teams like Barcelona are going to be interested in the best sort of talent in the world, and that is one area that they are looking to upgrade and kind of replace Luis Suarez, who's knocking on a bit now, and I know his contract runs out, I think, at the end of next season, so they'll have a concern about that. Or Leao's performance level drops, and it's good that Barcelona aren't interested anymore based on that, but at the same time, we then don't have the same player, so a little bit worried about that, but hopefully, like I say, nothing serious, and it's just paper talk coming from Spain. And then we got Mohamed El Nene. Now, this is a weird one. I always thought he was a really bang average midfielder who only played in Europa League games for Arsenal. And that does actually seem to be the consensus, but it's a hard no from me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think what you just said about him is actually high praise for the player. I think he's worse than bang average. I think he's bang trash. I just, um, yeah, it's a big no for me. I would be very upset if that happened.
Mesut Ozil?
That's another one where I'm like, realistically, we shouldn't. But that experience, how old is he? Is he 36, 37?
Mesut Ozil?
Yeah, he's old.
I think he's 31.
What? There's no way he's 31.
He's 30. He's 30.
Son of a
He
bitch.
was young when he was at Real Madrid, remember?
Dude,
When he was,
I thought he was so old. I thought he was almost done.
he joined Real Madrid when he was 21 from Werder Bremen, and that's why I remember him looking really young.
Wow. Okay, then yeah, I'd take him. That would be an improvement on Biglia. That's a playmaker we could use there. I think that would be a good move then. I thought he was significantly older.
Well, I see him play. If he does arrive, I could see him potentially playing in behind Piontek in a 4-2-3-1. You know, he's played his best football in that playmaker position. However, he's a luxury player. There's a reason he's not getting in the Arsenal team at the moment because of, you know, reported attitude problems. He's on £350,000 a week, so he'd have to take a massive wage cut to come. Don't think he's actually played consistently good football for about 2 years. I don't know. I think there was probably a time and a place for this kind of deal, but that ship has sailed. And the only move I see now for him is back to somewhere like Fenerbahce, and apparently they're sort of in talks anyway. So, but it's a name as well. That's the thing, you know. We said we can't be hypocrites and say that we were jealous of Inter because they brought in big names like Lukaku and Sanchez, even though they've not had the best of form and stuff, and then say, well, we'd snub our noses at Mesut Ozil. It would certainly be something that provokes a bit of excitement, but I don't think it makes much sense from a financial point of view or for our squad, really. And then where are we? Nothing else, really. I mean, there's been something about Ricardo Rodriguez potentially leaving, but I don't see him leaving before the end of the season because then we need to sign a new backup left back, and that doesn't really make much sense. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it then. Oh no, there's one more actually. Javi Martinez, and the reason I want to talk about this is because this is a very, very strong yes from me. He's 3 years younger than Lucas Biglia. He's played a hell of a lot of games for Bayern, Champions League experience, you know, even Champions League finals. But he's still 31, so he's not going to cost an absolute fortune, and he's like, in my opinion, one of the better registas in European football over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'd take him over Ozil. Like, if those were my choices, I'd pick him. Because you're right, he's got a more defined role. He could replace Biglia, who's obviously 34, 35 now, or
34, I think, yeah.
34, and his performance has declined over the last 2 seasons, especially due to his injury. So it makes sense to replace him, and I just don't know if Benacer's there yet. So having another experienced guy that could fill in for another 2-3 seasons while Benacer develops, it makes more sense to me.
Yeah, agreed. And that's pretty much everything. But yeah, hell of an action-packed episode that. A lot to talk about, new manager, etc. And fingers crossed we're recording in a week's time with 3 points under our belt and talking about a Pioli demolition of Lecce. But in the meantime, I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. You can find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher or at Gilpin Chronicle for some more explicit Milan-based rants. And I've been joined, as per usual, by Anthony Torgrud.
Yeah, it's been a fun one. A lot to discuss. I'm glad we had the international break and I was able to calm down after this whole Pioli nonsense and screw my head back on straight and, you know, be a lot more calm and reasonable in this. Also, I do want to apologize to a listener who last week had asked if it was impossible for us to make a podcast without swearing, and I said I would make it an effort to do so, and I was so good up until I found out Ozil was 30 years old and not 38. So I was really close, and I'm sorry. I'll do better next week. But yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Torgid45. And yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, we might have to start bleeping out in the future, but yeah, I don't know. It's part and parcel of it, I guess, for the time being, until we start winning a few games. Yeah, thank you very much for listening in, everyone. We will catch you in a week's
Abate,
time.
la rimette dentro, esce Radu, porta vuota, gol! Gol! Abbiamo battuto il gatto nero, li abbiamo battuti tutti, Alessio, grande Alessio, è bella la vita, lava quella zolla Alessio, lava quella zolla Alessio.